Part 1. Arrival at Harper's Inn. The twin otter propeller plane shook violently as it descended towards the tiny Talkeetna airport. I gripped the seat, fighting back the nausea rising in my throat. Through the frozen window, Alaska appeared as an endless white sheet, cold and alien. 15 years away, and now I was returning as a writer seeking inspiration for a new novel. "Prepare for landing," the pilot's voice crackled over the static-filled speaker. The wheels touched down with a thud that made my teeth chatter. The temperature outside was minus 20 degrees Celsius. February in Alaska is not for the weak. I am Sebastian Thorne, 35 years old, and I am sitting here because of a letter. Ella Harper, an old friend of my mother's, had invited me to visit her inn in the wilderness north of Talkeetna. "You will find answers about your mother here," she wrote in a shaky hand. My mother, Dr. Meredith Thorne, disappeared without a trace when I was 12, in 1975. Father said she left because of work stress, but I never believed it. A dedicated scientist like my mother wouldn't abandon her only son. Father died when I was 20, taking the secret of my mother's disappearance with him. The north wind pierced my thick coat as soon as I stepped off the plane stairs. My breath turned into white smoke in the frigid air. Talkeetna Airport was just a small wooden building with a snow-covered roof. A few locals watched me with curious, guarded eyes. "Mr. Thorne?" A young man approached, his skin sun-weathered in the way of those who have lived their whole lives in the wilderness. "I'm Laird Coleman. Mrs. Ella hired me to help at the inn. She asked me to pick you up." Laird looked about 25, with broad shoulders and the calloused hands of a true hunter. But what caught my attention were his eyes, something flickering behind them, as if hiding something. There was a small scar on his left temple, fresh, healed only within the last few weeks. "Thanks for coming to get me," I said, lifting my suitcase into the bed of his old pickup truck. Laird just nodded, saying nothing more. We drove in silence for 40 minutes through thick, snowy roads. Black pine forests surrounded us on both sides, occasionally revealing gaps where the wind whipped up small snow tornadoes. Harper's Inn appeared like a ghost in the evening mist. A 3-story wooden building built in the 1940s, its roof covered in a thick layer of snow. Oil lamps flickered through the windows, creating a false sense of warmth amidst the bone-cutting cold. "We're here," Laird said, his voice hoarse as if unused for a long time. Ella Harper was waiting at the door, a woman in her 50s with silver hair tied back neatly and cold gray eyes. She wore a thick dark blue wool dress, clutching a shawl tight. "Sebastian," she called my name, as if she had known me for a long time. "You finally came." Inside the inn, it was warmer, but the atmosphere was strangely heavy. Old oak furniture, walls covered in black and white photos of people I didn't recognize. The smell of burning wood from the fireplace mixed with another scent, metallic, unpleasant, like spoiled meat. "You must be tired," Ella said. "Your room is on the second floor, number 7. Dinner will be served at 7 o'clock. I realized she didn't ask about my flight or the weather. No usual pleasantries, just a tense silence between the three of us. Room 7 was small but clean, a single bed against the wall, next to a pine writing desk and an old chair. I put my suitcase down and looked out the window at the dark forest in the distance. Something was wrong with this place. I felt it in every nerve ending. Dinner took place in the large dining room with wood-paneled walls. Besides me, Ella, and Laird, there were 2 other guests, a middle-aged couple from Anchorage. The husband introduced himself as Robert Taylor, a software engineer, and his wife, Maria, a veterinary nurse. They laughed and chatted happily, seemingly oblivious to the tense atmosphere filling the room. "We came here for a vacation," Maria shared. "Heard this region has beautiful scenery in winter." "Beautiful and dangerous," Ella remarked dryly, placing a plate of food in front of me. Venison. Laird hunted it last week. I looked at the red meat on the plate. Blood was still oozing out, pinkish. There was something strange about the way it was cut, uneven cuts, as if torn rather than sliced with a knife. Delicious, Robert said after tasting it. A bit tough, but flavorful. Laird sat opposite, eyes never leaving his plate. His hand trembled slightly as he held his fork. I noticed a bite mark on his wrist, a semicircle of human teeth recently healed. Has something happened here? I asked, unable to suppress my curiosity. Ella looked up, her eyes cold as ice. What do you mean? Everyone seems tense. The room went silent. The couple stopped talking. Laird gripped his fork until his knuckles turned white. 2 local hunters went missing last week, Ella said after a long pause. Jared Kimura and Tom Nikolai. They went into the woods to hunt bears but didn't come back. That happens often in Alaska, the tourist husband piped up. Harsh weather, wild animals. Not like this, Laird suddenly interrupted, his voice trembling. It wasn't animals. Laird, Ella snapped, enough. But I had seen the fear in his eyes, the fear of someone who has witnessed something inexplicable. What did you see? I asked gently. Laird looked up, his eyes cold, then back at me. Footprints? But not human and not animal. It was broken, as if the bones were broken, but it kept walking. Enough! Ella stood up abruptly, her chair dragging on the wooden floor. Laird, go to your room immediately, and guests, please excuse him. My nephew sometimes has an overactive imagination. Laird stood up, but before leaving, he leaned towards me. Don't go out at night, he whispered quickly, no matter what you hear. The dining room became suffocatingly silent after he left. I tried to swallow the venison, but it felt stuck in my throat. Ella sat down, face pale. Sorry about that, she said weakly. Laird, he hasn't gotten over the death of his parents. They died in a plane crash 10 years ago. I nodded in sympathy, but deep down I knew there was more to it. The look in Laird's eyes wasn't grief, it was sheer terror. That night I lay in bed but couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the wooden shutters. Snow beat against the window like invisible fingers tapping. And then, around 2 a.m., I heard it. A metallic clanging sound coming from behind the inn. Then another, and another. I sat up, heart pounding. Laird's warning echoed in my head. Don't go out at night. But I am a writer. Curiosity is an irrepressible instinct. I put on more layers, took a flashlight from my backpack, and sneaked out of the room. The hallway was pitch black, only weak moonlight filtering through the window at the end of the hall. I went down the stairs, step by step, trying not to make the wooden planks creak. The kitchen on the ground floor was also dark. I followed the wall to find the back door. The metallic clanging sounded again. Closer this time, seemingly coming from the cold storage shed behind the inn. I opened the back door. The cold wind cut my face like a knife. Heavy snow reduced visibility to just a few meters. I turned on my flashlight and stepped out. The cold storage was about 20 meters from the main building, an old metal structure, the door ajar. The banging came from inside, rhythmic like a heartbeat. I approached, each step sinking deep into the snow. As I got near the door, a strong metallic stench hit my nose, the smell of blood, and something else, the smell of rotting flesh. Pushing the door wide open, I shone the flashlight inside, and what I saw froze the blood in my veins. Something was moving in the dark. Not human, but human-shaped. Its skin was pale, almost transparent under the light. Ribs showed through the thin skin, and the eyes glowing red like embers. It turned to look at me, mouth opening in a roar that wasn't human. Fresh blood still dripped from its chin onto the cold metal floor. I didn't have time to scream, didn't have time to run, just stood there frozen in pure horror. Then the cold storage door slammed shut as if an invisible hand had pushed it hard from the inside. The automatic lock clicked. I stood there in the falling snow, trembling not just from the cold, my heart beating frantically in my chest. What I just saw couldn't be real. Impossible. But the bloodstain on the white snow was real. The metallic smell still lingering in the air was real, and the whisper of the wind carried a terrifying truth. Alaska in 1998 was hiding a terrible secret, and I had just touched the edge of it. Looking back at the inn, I saw Ella standing at a second-floor window looking down at me. Her face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel that cold gaze. In her hand, she held something that looked like an old notebook. She knew. She knew everything. And now I knew too much. When I returned to my room, I found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was an old photo. My mother standing with a group of people in white lab coats in front of a concrete building. On the back, scribbled words, Aurora Facility, 1974, before everything went wrong. 1974, 1 year before Mom disappeared. My heart raced as I realized Mom didn't leave. She was kept, or worse, and Ella Harper knew the whole truth. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of the creature in the cold storage appeared. Pale skin stretched over a twisted frame, glowing red eyes devoid of humanity. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I was dressed and mentally prepared for what was to come. The dining room was empty at 6 a.m. I brewed a cup of black coffee from the kitchen and sat by the window looking out at the snow-covered forest. The blinding white light of early morning in Alaska possessed a cold, almost surreal beauty. "You're up early." I jumped and turned around. Laird stood in the doorway, eyes red, as if he hadn't slept. He wore heavy hunting gear, a rifle slung over his shoulder. "So are you," I replied. Laird poured himself coffee and sat opposite me. We were silent for a long time, each lost in thought. I noticed his hand was bandaged. The bite I saw last night had been treated. "What did you see last night?" he asked, finally, voice hoarse. I heard noises from the cold storage. I weighed whether to tell the truth, but something in his eyes, the desperation of someone needing to share a burden, made me decide to trust him. "There was something in there," I said slowly. "Not human, but used to be human." Laird closed his eyes as if he had been waiting for this answer. "They're back," he whispered. "I knew it. The footprints in the woods are exactly like last month's. Last month when Jared and Tom started acting strange. They came back from a hunting trip with blank faces. Didn't talk, just stared." He touched the bandage on his hand. "Tom bit me 3 days before he disappeared completely." He looked at me, then around the empty room as if afraid someone was eavesdropping. "The first wave was in 1975, right after your mother disappeared. The government said it was a flu epidemic, quarantined the whole area, but my grandfather said it wasn't flu. The dead came back. 1975, my heart raced, the year my mother went missing. The second wave was in 1988, smaller, contained faster. And the most recent," he hesitated, "last month. But this time is different. They didn't attack immediately. They waited, planned." My heart beat faster. "You're saying zombies?" "Don't use that word," Laird almost shouted, then lowered his voice. "They're here. They remember. Part of them is still there, trapped in the rotting corpse." "So Jared and Tom, maybe they've been found by them." Laird stood up abruptly. "I have to go. Have to find them before it's too late. Or at least end their suffering." "I'm going with you," I said without thinking. Laird looked at me in surprise. "You don't know what you're facing." "But you do, and you need help." He considered for a moment, then nodded. Take the warmest clothes you have, and if you have a weapon. I have my father's hunting knife, I said. Better than nothing. Meet me out back in 10 minutes. Don't let Mrs. Ella know. I went back to my room, grabbed my backpack, stuffed in a flashlight, knife, and some energy bars, layered on every warm piece of clothing I could. I sneaked down the back stairs. Laird was waiting with a motorized snowmobile. Blood trail leads north, he said, pointing towards the dense forest, 2 kilometers out. We plunged into the forest as the sun just peeked over the horizon. Trees blurred past like black ghosts. The cold wind cut my cheeks, but adrenaline kept me alert. After 15 minutes, Laird stopped the snowmobile. We stood in a small clearing in the woods. The snow here was a different color, crimson, frozen into patches of blood crystals. Here, Laird knelt, pointing at tracks in the snow. I looked down and had to stifle a gasp. They weren't normal footprints. They were twisted, dragged, as if the foot bones had been broken into pieces but kept moving. And there were 5 sets, one walking on 2 legs but the toes twisted at impossible angles. We follow these, Laird said, voice tense. We walked deeper into the forest, following the blood trail and the monstrous footsteps. The sun rose higher but brought no warmth. The trees grew denser, blocking the sky. In the dim light, everything seemed to move. Shadows danced, branches reached out like skeletal fingers. Then I smelled it, the thick smell of rot, terrifyingly familiar. Close, Laird whispered, unslinging his rifle. We stepped through a low line of trees and stopped dead in our tracks. In front of us was a scene from my worst nightmare. A body, or what used to be a body, lay under a large tree. The lower half was torn apart, intestines and organs scattered on the snow like gruesome Christmas decorations. Ribs were splayed outward like white hands reaching for the sky. But the most horrific part was the face. Eyes rolled back, pupils turned cloudy red, mouth open in a silent scream, teeth unnaturally long and sharp as fangs. And it was still alive, or at least still functioning. Lips moving, trying to form words. Jared, Laird gasped, voice breaking. I couldn't take my eyes off the gruesome sight. How could it still function with such wounds? Jared's chest still heaved weakly, but not from breathing. Something was squirming inside, trying to get out. Kill me. Jared's wheezing voice came out in jagged gasps. Before it hatches. I gasped in horror. Just then, Jared's chest swelled, skin stretching like a balloon. Something was under the skin, many things, moving, trying to break the fragile layer. Laird, trembling, raised his rifle. I'm sorry, my friend. The gunshot echoed in the empty forest. Jared was finally at peace. But the echo of the shot seemed to wake something up. From behind the tree trunks, I heard shuffling, wheezing, bones cracking. Run, Laird said. Run! We turned to flee, but it was too late. They appeared from every direction, twisted shapes moving with impossible speed. I caught glimpses of pale faces, skin peeling to reveal rotting muscle underneath, glowing red eyes, fingernails unnaturally long and curved like claws. One of them lunged at me. I dodged sideways, pulling out the hunting knife. The blade went through its chest with a wet thwack. But the creature didn't stop. It grabbed my arm, claws tearing through my coat. Laird fired continuously, each shot dropping one, but they kept coming. And I realized with utmost horror, some wore government soldier uniforms, tattered but insignia still visible. Snowmobile, I screamed. We ran towards the vehicle, fighting as we went, their blood and ours splattered on the white snow. Finally, Laird jumped on, started the engine. I climbed on the back just as a rotting hand grabbed my ankle. Hold on! Laird revved the throttle. The machine shot forward, dragging the creature clinging to me. I kicked hard at its face until it let go, tumbling into the snow. We sped through the forest at breakneck speed, branches whipping our faces. Behind us, the roaring of the monster pack faded, but I knew they wouldn't give up. They would follow the trail. They would find us. As the inn came into view, I saw a sight that stopped my heart. A convoy of military trucks surrounded the building, soldiers in white hazmat suits and gas masks, and standing among them in a white doctor's coat was a blonde woman with eyes cold as ice. "Stop!" She raised a hand as we rushed up. "This area is under quarantine by medical emergency order." Laird stopped the vehicle 10 meters away. We panted, blood still dripping from our wounds. "I am Dr. Astrid Novak," the woman said, voice emotionless. "Arctic Biological Research Institute. You have been exposed to a level 4 pathogen. Need immediate isolation." I recognized the logo on her coat. Not the CDC or any health agency I knew. A triangle with the North Star in the center, exactly like in my mother's photo. "Pathogen?" I almost screamed. "They are monsters! They eat people!" Novak narrowed her eyes at me. "Who are you?" "Sebastian Thorne. I'm a writer." "Thorne," she repeated. Something changed in her eyes. "Son of Meredith Thorne?" My heart stopped. She knew. My mother knew. Novak smiled coldly. She was the creator of all this, and the only one to ever escape Aurora alive. She signaled the soldiers. They advanced, guns trained on us. "Wait!" Ella appeared from the main door. "My nephew has nothing to do with this. He just—" "Mrs. Harper," Novak cut in, "we discussed this. Your in is patient 0. Everyone here must be tested." "Patient 0? I looked at Ella. "You knew about this?" Ella avoided my gaze. "I had no choice. They said if I cooperated, you would be compensated." Novak finished the sentence. "Now, gentlemen, please step off the vehicle. Slowly." Laird gripped the handlebars tight. "I don't trust them." "We have no choice," I whispered. But as we got off the vehicle, I noticed a strange detail. Laird's old typewriter was in the back of the truck, and on it a paper with a hasty note. "They are not human anymore. But not all are enemies. Find Project Aurora." Laird saw me looking and shook his head almost imperceptibly. "Don't say anything," his eyes warned. "Take them inside," Novak ordered. "Prepare for blood tests, and someone clean up that mess." She pointed towards the forest where a trail of bright red blood stretched from the path, as if something or someone had crawled from the woods but didn't make it. As soldiers escorted us into the inn, I glanced one last time at the cold storage. The door was now wide open, the inside empty, and I understood a cold truth. Last night wasn't the first time that creature was here. It had been living in the cold storage, fed by someone, protected by someone. Ella Harper had more secrets than I thought, and now we were all prisoners in a deadly game where I didn't yet understand the rules. Part 2. The Escape and the Truth. The makeshift medical room set up in the inn's living room looked like a sci-fi movie set. Clear plastic sheets separated spaces, modern medical equipment sat neatly on stainless steel tables. Cold white fluorescent lights shone down, making everything look unreal. "Left arm," Dr. Novak ordered. Syringe gleaming in her hand, I reluctantly held out my arm. The needle pricked the vein, dark red blood flowing into the tube. Next to me, Laird was also getting blood drawn, his face pale. "Results in 30 minutes, Novak told an assistant. "Check antibody levels, abnormal proteins," and she glanced at me. "Signs of cellular mutation." "Cellular mutation?" I asked. She didn't answer, turning to the analyzer machine. I recognized the logo on the device, not CDC as she claimed, but a symbol I had never seen. Triangle with the North Star. "Aurora," I whispered. Novak spun around, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "Nothing," I replied quickly, but she had heard. I saw the change in her eyes, from professional coldness to dangerous alertness. "Take them to isolation," she ordered, separately. 2 soldiers escorted me to the 3rd floor to a small room at the end of the hall. They pushed me in and locked the door. Through the small window, I saw a guard standing outside. The room was empty except for a bed and a small table. But what caught my attention was the air vent on the ceiling. Too small to crawl through, but maybe. I climbed onto the table, listening through the vent. Voices echoed faintly through the duct system. "Torn's blood sample shows anomalies. Antibody levels dangerously high, 97%. Impossible. Only the original test subjects from 1974. I know. Either he was injected as a child or Meredith did the unthinkable. Gene editing while he was in the womb. 1963. The technology was primitive then, but if anyone could do it, it was Meredith. My heart pounded. 1963, the year I was born. Mother had planned this before I was even born. And Coleman? Novak asked. Positive, early stage. The bite transmitted it. Without the antiserum, he will fully transform within 72 hours. The process has begun. Body heat rising, cellular structure altering. I heard footsteps leaving. Need to get out of here. Need to warn Laird. I checked the window, locked tight from the outside. The main door, obviously locked. But then I remembered a trick my father taught me. Every lock has a weakness. Taking my hunting knife, I pried at the base of the keyhole. The old metal of the inn began to bend. It took 10 tense minutes, but finally the lock mechanism popped. I cracked the door, looking into the hall. The guard was gone. My chance. Sneaking out, I moved along the corridor to find Laird's room. He was in room 12. Door also locked. I tapped lightly in a specific rhythm. A Morse code sequence my father taught me. Sebastian? Laird's voice came out weak. Stand back, I whispered, then repeated the lock-picking technique. When the door opened, I saw Laird sitting on the bed, face paler than before, sweat beading on his forehead despite the freezing room. You're infected, I said quickly. They say you'll turn in 2 days. Laird nodded slowly. I can feel something inside, gnawing. We have to leave, now. Where? They've locked down the whole area. I remembered the overheard conversation. Project Aurora. What do you know about it? Laird's eyes lit up. My father, before he died, he left some papers. He used to work for the government, civil engineer. In 1990, he was hired to build an underground facility. Where? Foot of Mount Denali, 50 kilometers north of here. Laird stood up, swaying. He said it was a climate research lab, but it wasn't. He saw strange things. Giant glass tanks, medical equipment, and guards. Too many for a weather station. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. We froze. Hide, I whispered. We rushed out of the room, running towards the stairs at the end of the hall. But just as we got there, a figure appeared below. Not a soldier. It was Hank Miller, a man I hadn't met, but recognized from the old badge on his shirt. Ex-Special Forces, salt and pepper hair, long scar on his left cheek. You're Thorne and Coleman? He asked quickly. We nodded cautiously. Follow me. Not much time. With no choice, we followed Miller down to the second floor, through a door I hadn't noticed leading into a storage area. He led us through a maze of old crates to a solid iron door. Pipes lead to the basement, built during the Cold War, connects to the tunnel system under the mountain. Why are you helping us? I asked. Miller turned, eyes hard. Because 20 years ago, I was one of the soldiers ordered to massacre the village. When the outbreak first happened, I couldn't forget the children crying. He turned away. This time I choose the right side. The iron door opened, revealing stairs into darkness. Cold, damp air rushed up. Go straight 500 meters, turn left at the first fork. It leads to the service entrance of the Aurora facility. What about you? Laird asked. I'll stay to distract them. Miller looked straight into my eyes. In the facility, find storage room B7. All the answers you need there. Sirens suddenly wailed. We were detected. Go! Miller pushed us into the door. We rushed down the stairs into darkness. Behind us, shouting and gunfire erupted. Miller was fighting to buy us time. The tunnel was cold as a catacomb. I turned on my flashlight. The weak beam hit moldy concrete walls. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming puddles on the floor. Unbelievable, Laird panted beside me. All these years, and Ellen knew about this tunnel without saying a word. We ran in silence. only footsteps echoing in the narrow space. Reached the fork, turned left as Miller instructed. The tunnel sloped deeper. After what seemed like an hour, dim blue light appeared ahead. We slowed, approaching cautiously. A massive steel door blocked the way. Next to it, a control panel with a small screen. The triangle logo with the North Star stood out on the door. Project Aurora. I read the text below. Classified Biological Research Facility. Laird studied the control panel. Needs an access code. I recalled what I heard. Thinking fast, I tried typing 997. Nothing. "Let me try," Laird said. He typed a long sequence of numbers. My father's completion date. He always used important dates as passwords. The screen flashed green. The heavy steel door slid open with the hiss of grinding metal. Inside, the corridor was bright with fluorescent lights, white walls, polished floors reflecting the light, a stark contrast to the old tunnel. But there was something creepy. No dust, no signs of time passing, as if this place was preserved in a vacuum. Still has power after 23 years? Mini nuclear reactor, Laird explained. My dad designed the system to run autonomously for 50 years. The corridor led to a central hub with many turns. Signs on the wall, Lab A15, Isolation Ward, Surgery, Cryogenics, and finally, Storage B7. There, I pointed to the sign. But as we stepped forward, a mechanical warning voice boomed, "Intrusion detected. Initiating defense protocol." Lights turned red, automatic locks clicked everywhere. "Run!" We dashed towards room B7, left turn, right turn through the maze of hallways, and then I saw them through the glass windows of a lab. Dozens of tanks filled with green liquid. Inside, human shapes floated, some intact, others mutated beyond recognition. "God," Laird gasped, "they're growing them." A roar sounded from behind, not from a speaker, but from a creature of flesh and blood. We turned. At the end of the hall, a massive black shadow was approaching. Unlike the zombies in the woods, this thing was bigger, muscles bulging, deformed under stretched skin, eyes glowing red, and it wore armor. Bioweapon, I realized with horror. They turned zombies into weapons. The creature roared and charged at us with impossible speed. Room B7 was just ahead. I grabbed the handle, relieved to find it unlocked. We rushed in and slammed the door just as massive claws scraped against the metal. Inside was a massive archive. Filing cabinets lined the walls, old computer monitors flickered, and in the middle of the room, "Holy shit," Laird whispered, a large board covered with photos, diagrams, notes. In the center photo, a group of scientists. I recognized Novak, 20 years younger. And next to her, my heart stopped. "Mom," I gasped in disbelief. The woman in the photo was exactly my mother, Dr. Meredith Torn, younger, hair still jet black, the confident smile of someone who believes she's changing the world. Beside her were strange faces in lab coats, except for one. Ella Harper, 20 years younger, standing right behind my mother. Below the photo, a caption, "Aurora Project Founding Team, 1974. Goal, research cellular regeneration and human lifespan extension." Lifespan extension, Laird laughed bitterly. They created death that cannot die. I flipped through documents, hands shaking, experiment reports, research logs, and a scrap of paper in Mom's handwriting. May 15th, 1975, Experiment 127 failed catastrophically. Virus Z1, provisional name, mutated unexpectedly. Test subjects lost total cognitive awareness after 4 to 8 hours of infection. Bodies continue to function, but the brain is no longer human. They attack any living organism. Worse, the virus transmits by bites, scratches. A nurse was infected this morning. I have to... The writing stopped abruptly. Ink smeared like a teardrop. The banging on the door grew violent. Metal began to buckle. "Sebastian!" Laird pulled me. "No time!" But I couldn't look away from the documents. Experiment files, human trial reports, and a handwritten note from my mother. Experiment failed catastrophically. Virus mutating uncontrollably. Subjects losing humanity. Only predatory instinct remains. Injected antibodies into Sebastian as a child. Hope my son never has to face what we created. The door cracked open. Giant claws poked through the gap. "Computer!" Laird pointed to the screen. "Download everything!" I rushed to the console, plugged in the USB Laird handed me. Files started transferring. 50%, 70%. The door burst open. The giant creature stepped in, saliva dripping onto the floor. Laird charged at the monster with his hunting knife. "No!" I screamed. But it was too late. Laird stabbed the knife into the creature's chest. The blade went deep, but the monster didn't even flinch. It grabbed Laird by the neck, lifting him into the air. I saw Laird's worst bones snap under the terrible pressure. "Run!" Laird wheezed, blood leaking from his mouth. "Save everyone! Tell the world!" I saw the change in his eyes, from black to red. But unlike the other zombies, there was still some awareness, some humanity in there. Laird was fighting the virus, using his last will to buy me time. "Thanks for believing in me," he whispered, voice no longer human. Then Laird roared, twisted in the monster's grip, and bit into its neck. His teeth, now long and sharp as fangs, tore through the flesh. Black blood sprayed like a fountain. 90%, 95%. Two monsters struggled frantically. Laird, or what used to be Laird, fought with the feral instinct of the newly turned. In a frenzy, he smashed the giant monster's head against the wall. Once, twice. The concrete wall cracked. 100%. Transfer complete. I yanked the USB, shoved it in my pocket. Looked one last time at Laird, the brave friend who chose death to save me. For a moment, his eyes seemed to light up with a final spark of awareness. Lips moved. "Run!" I dashed through the door, tears blurring my vision. Behind me, roars and tearing flesh echoed, along with an explosion. Laird had triggered something, probably the self-destruct system his father designed. The corridor shook. Lights flickered. I ran blindly, on instinct more than memory. Smoke began to pour from the vents. "Warning," the mechanical voice boomed. "Initiating purge protocol. Self-destruct in 5 minutes." 5 minutes. I have to get out of here. Left turn, right turn. A door with an emergency exit sign. I kicked the door open, climbed a spiral staircase that seemed endless. Lungs burning from lack of oxygen. Legs trembling from exhaustion. 3 minutes. Finally, natural light. I smashed the exit door, burst out into the freezing open air. Snow, wind, and freedom. 1 minute. I ran as far as I could. Threw myself behind a large rock, just as the ground shook. The explosion wasn't loud like I thought, just a dull thump. Then the mountainside collapsed. Snow and rock buried the entrance to the Aurora facility. 23 years of secrets, now buried forever. Along with Laird Coleman, the silent hero the world would never know. I turned my back, starting the long trek through the cold snow. In my pocket, the USB weighed heavy with terrifying truth. Alaska 1998 held darker secrets than I imagined, and the real war had only just begun. Part 3. The Broadcast and the Cure. The snow fell thick like a white curtain as I stumbled across the mountainside. Each step sank knee-deep. My body was numb with cold and exhaustion. Behind me, the column of black smoke from the Aurora facility still rose high, mixed with the siren wailing in the wind. The USB in my pocket felt like a burning coal, heavy with the weight of the truth. Laird was dead. No, worse than that. He had turned into one of them, and I had to leave him in that underground hell. Guilt clawed at my chest more fiercely than the cutting cold. Suddenly, the sound of helicopter engines roared. I looked up to see 2 Blackhawks appearing from the south, searchlights sweeping the slopes. I dove into a rocky crevice, pressing myself against the cliff face as the beam passed just meters away. "Sector 7 clear," a voice echoed from the loudspeaker. "Moving to Sector 8. The helicopters passed, but I knew they would be back. I needed to find shelter before I was discovered or froze to death. It took nearly an hour to find my way down to the foot of the mountain. Luckily, I remembered an old ranger station Laird had mentioned. The small wooden cabin appeared like a mirage through the snow, windows dark. I broke the lock with my hunting knife, a skill I had sadly mastered. Inside, it was warmer though still freezing. I found some old canned food, wool blankets, and most importantly, a small generator. When the engine sputtered to life and the lights turned on, I locked the door tight, covered the windows, and sat down at the rotting wooden table. Taking an old laptop from the corner, I trembling plugged in the USB.
The screen lit up with hundreds of files, videos, documents, experiment reports. I clicked on the first file, a video dated May 15, 1990. My mother appeared on the screen, younger, hair still jet black. She stood in a brightly lit lab, wearing a white coat. Experiment report number 47. Mom's voice rang out, making my heart constrict. "We have successfully created a virus strain capable of regenerating dead cells. Test subject 12 shows superior recovery capabilities after fatal trauma." The camera panned to a large glass tank. Inside, a soldier with a wound through his heart was standing up. His eyes were empty, but the wound was healing itself at an astonishing rate. "However," Mom continued, her voice tense, "there is a problem. The subject loses cognitive ability, reacts to stimuli purely on instinct, and," she hesitated, "shows signs of cannibalism." The video cut to 2 weeks later. My mother looked more gaunt, dark circles under her eyes. "Disaster," she said simply. "Virus mutated beyond control. 8 staff members infected. They attacked and spread it to others. We had to," her voice choked, "terminate 23 people in the last 2 days." I paused the video, hands shaking. Mom didn't die in a car accident. She was one of the creators of this disaster. The sound of engines roared outside. I killed the lights and peeked through a crack in the door. 3 military Humvees stopped in front of the station. Soldiers jumped out, fully armed, sweeping the area. "He can't have gone far," an officer shouted. I backed towards the rear door, but heard footsteps coming from that direction. Surrounded. Gripping my knife, I prepared for a final stand, but then gunfire erupted, not aimed at the station, but from the woods. "Contact! Contact!" a soldier yelled. "They're everywhere!" Through the window I saw chaos. Dozens of dark shapes rushed out of the forest. Zombies from the Aurora facility, likely released when the system collapsed. They attacked the convoy with frenzied ferocity. A soldier had his throat torn out right in front of me, blood spraying onto the white snow. Screams, gunshots, roars blended into a symphony of horror. This was my chance. I dashed out the back door, running into the dark woods. Behind me, the battle raged, but I knew the military would lose. They weren't prepared for this kind of enemy. I ran blindly in the dark, branches scratching my face, cold snow soaking through my shoes, but I didn't dare stop. After maybe half an hour, I saw a flickering light ahead. Harper's Inn? No, closer, a small cabin in the woods. I approached cautiously. Through the window I saw a woman sitting by the fireplace, Astrid Novak. She was alone, studying something on a laptop. I weighed my options. She could be an enemy, but maybe. I knocked on the door. Novak jumped up, drawing a gun from the table. "Who is it?" she said, her voice tense. "Sebastian Thorne. I need to talk." The door cracked open. Novak looked me through the gap, gun still aimed. "You shouldn't be here," she said coldly. "I know about Aurora, about my mother, about everything." Her expression changed. After a tense moment, she opened the door wide. "Get in, fast." The cabin was warm and tidy. Novak gestured for me to sit and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "I knew you'd find the truth," she said, handing me a glass. "Just like your mother did." "You knew my mother?" "Meredith was my mentor. The most brilliant woman I ever knew. Novak stared into the fire. She tried to stop the disaster, but it was too late. The virus had spread. But why cover it up? Why not destroy it completely? Novak laughed bitterly. Because they saw potential. The perfect bioweapon. Immortal soldiers who know no pain, no fear. They decided to control instead of destroy. And now everything is out of control again. She looked straight into my eyes. But you have what they need. The antibodies in your blood. My mother injected me? Not just injected. Meredith was a genius. She developed gene editing techniques 20 years ahead of the world. When she found out she was pregnant in 1962, she decided on one final experiment, to create a child completely immune. I am an experiment, my voice trembled. You are hope, Astrid corrected. Meredith knew the virus would escape control. She prepared for that day by creating you, the carrier of the antidote in your blood. But how do you know so much? Astrid was silent for a moment. Because I was her student. In 1974, I was 18, just graduated college early. Meredith recruited me into Aurora. She taught me everything about virology, genetics, she hesitated, how to create life from death. You participated in creating those monsters too. At first, we believed we were saving humanity, curing cancer, aging, even death. But the military, Astrid shook her head. They turned the dream into a nightmare.
Before I could reply, the sound of shattering glass rang out. A dark shape crashed through the window. A zombie in a soldier's uniform. It collapsed on the floor, then stood up with jerky, unnatural movements. Novak fired 3 shots into its head. The zombie fell, thick black blood oozing onto the wooden floor. They found us, she said, reloading. We have to go, now. We rushed out the back door. In the dark forest, dozens of red eyes glowed like hellfire stars. Growls came from every direction. My car, Novak pointed to a Land Rover parked 10 meters away. We ran for the car. A zombie lunged from the left. I spun, stabbing my knife into its eye socket. The blade went deep into the brain. The zombie crumpled, but more were coming. Too many. Novak started the engine. Get in! I jumped into the passenger seat, just as 3 zombies slammed into the door. Novak floored it, wheels spinning in the snow before shooting forward. A zombie clung to the hood. Novak swerved hard, smashing it against a tree. Where are we going? I shouted over the roaring engine. Talkeetna Airport, she shouted back. I have a plane there. But as we burst out of the woods onto the main road, my heart sank. Ahead, a barricade blocked the road with guards and armored vehicles. Checkpoint, she cursed. They've locked down the whole sector. So what now? She looked at me, then at the USB in my hand. There is a way, but you have to trust me. I have no choice. Novak turned the car, speeding in a different direction. There's an old trail leading to Denali. If we're lucky. She didn't finish the sentence. Behind us, the headlights of multiple military trucks flared up. The chase began. Novak drove like a madwoman, dodging trees and rocks. Military vehicles stayed close behind. And worse, from both sides of the forest, dark shapes began running parallel to us. Zombies. They were chasing by instinct. Hold on, Novak screamed. She swerved hard. The car slid sideways and plunged down a slope. Behind us, a truck failed to handle the turn and tumbled into the ravine. The sound of grinding metal and screams echoed in the night. But the others kept pursuing, and the zombies grew in number. Suddenly, the trail opened into a wide clearing. Ahead lay a deep chasm with an old wooden bridge spanning it. Oh no, Novak whispered. The bridge looks like it could collapse any second. But there's no other way, I shouted. Novak took a deep breath and floored the gas pedal. The Land Rover shot onto the bridge. Wood creaked terrifyingly. Planks broke and flew out behind the wheels. In the middle of the bridge, a section of the floor collapsed. The rear wheels dropped. We were stuck. Get out! Novak yelled.
We jumped out the back. The military convoy stopped at the head of the bridge. Soldiers jumped out, weapons aimed. And from the forest, hundreds of zombies poured out, a sea of undead hungry for blood. "Jump," Novak said, looking down into the abyss. "It's the only chance." "Are you crazy? This height?" "There's a river below, cold but deep." She grabbed my hand. "Trust me." Gunshots fired, roars echoed. The bridge shook as zombies began to climb onto it. No choice left. We jumped. Cold wind ripped past us as we fell. Below us was a glacial river, black water between two white snowy banks. I had a fleeting thought that this was a terrible way to die, freezing in cold water instead of fighting. But at least it was a human death, not a monster's. The icy river carried us through what seemed like endless darkness. My body was numb, every muscle twitching from the cold. Beside me, Astrid breathed weakly, lips blue. If we didn't get out of the water soon, we would die of hypothermia before the zombies or the military found us. Luckily, the river brought us to a shallow bend. I used my last strength to pull Astrid onto the rocky bank. We lay there, shivering uncontrollably, looking up at the starry Alaskan sky. "Must find shelter," Astrid stammered through chattering teeth. I looked around in the dim moonlight. I saw a dark structure about 100 meters from the riverbank. Looked like an abandoned warehouse. We dragged ourselves towards the building, supporting each other through the thick snow. The warehouse door was locked, but the rotten wood was easily broken. Inside, it was pitch black and smelled of machine oil, but at least it was out of the wind. I found some old tarps and an empty oil drum. Using my hunting knife and a flint from my waterproof kit, I managed to start a small fire in the drum. The warm orange light flared up like a miracle. "Take off wet clothes," I told Astrid, "or we'll freeze." She nodded weakly. We turned our backs to each other, stripping off layers of soaked fabric and hanging them around the fire. Wrapping ourselves in the tarps, we sat close to share warmth.
"Thank you," Astrid whispered after a long time. "You saved my life." "We saved each other," I replied. "But why? Why help me?" Astrid stared into the fire, light dancing on her gaunt face. "Because I'm tired of hiding, tired of death. Project Aurora should have been buried 8 years ago, but greedy men wanted to weaponize it. You're not one of them." "I used to be." Her voice was full of regret. "I believed in science, in progress, but when I saw what we created, when I saw children turned into monsters," she shuddered. "There are lines that shouldn't be crossed." I took the USB from my pocket. Luckily, it was dry inside the waterproof case. "So what do we do with this?" "Broadcast it to the world," Astrid said firmly. "Let everyone know the truth. Public pressure will force the government to act." "But how? They control everything." The sound of a car engine outside cut me off. We doused the fire and looked through a crack in the door. An old pickup truck stopped, headlights shining straight at the warehouse. The door opened and Hank Miller stepped out. I couldn't believe my eyes. Miller, who had sacrificed himself for us to escape the inn, stood there, alive. His shirt was tattered, dried, blood-stained, but he was standing. "I know you're in there," Miller called out. "I came alone. We need to talk." Astrid and I looked at each other. A trap? But if Miller wanted to capture us, he would have brought an army. I opened the door cautiously. "How did you survive?" Miller laughed dryly. 20 years in special forces taught me how to get out of bad situations. But we don't have much time. They've quarantined all of Alaska, no one in or out." "So we're trapped?" Astrid asked, pulling the tarp tight. "Not exactly." Miller pulled a large bag from the truck. "I have dry clothes, food, and most importantly," he pulled out a portable radio transmitter. Long-range broadcast device, can send digital data via radio waves to anywhere in the world. My eyes lit up. "The USB!" "Exactly. But we need to get to the broadcast station in Fairbanks, 200 kilometers north." "Past the blockade?" Astrid asked. "I know a mountain trail, dangerous but possible." Miller looked at us seriously.
But you need to know. Once we broadcast, they will know exactly where we are. There will be no retreat. I didn't need to think. We go. Miller nodded. Change clothes. We leave in 10 minutes. We quickly put on warm, dry clothes from Miller's bag. He prepped weapons, an AR-15, a Glock pistol, and plenty of ammo. This journey wouldn't be peaceful. As we got in the truck, I noticed the cabin radio crackling with voices. Confirmed hundreds of infections spreading from ground zero, forces unable to contain, requesting immediate airstrike. It's worse than I thought, Miller shook his head. Virus spreading faster than in 1993. If we don't stop it, all of Alaska will become a dead zone. Astrid finished the sentence. We drove in heavy silence. The mountain trail was bumpy and narrow, abysses on both sides. Snow fell heavier, reducing visibility to meters. Miller drove with the skill of someone used to the terrain, but I still gripped the handle on every turn. After 2 tense hours, we reached a natural rest stop, a shallow cave in the cliff face. Miller killed the engine. Rest a bit, he said. Still a long way. We sat around a small fire, eating military rations. Astrid checked the transmitter, her face brightening. Works perfectly. If we get to Fairbanks, I can send all the data to every major news agency in the world simultaneously. Assuming we survive, Miller said grimly. He looked out of the cave at the falling snow. There's something I haven't said. Recon planes spotted a massive group of infected moving north. Thousands. I couldn't believe it. Aurora wasn't the only place destroyed. It seemed the virus had reached nearby towns. All infected are drawn in one direction, as if they are being summoned, Astrid whispered. Hive mind. Some research showed the virus could create neural links between infected. So where are they going? I asked. Miller pointed north. Fairbanks. My heart sank. The place we needed to go was where the monsters were gathering. Maybe it's not a coincidence, Astrid mused. What's special about Fairbanks? Eielson Air Force Base, Miller replied, hesitating. Nuclear weapons depot. The cave went suffocatingly silent. If thousands of zombies attack a nuclear base? We have to be faster than them, I said, new determination rising. Broadcast the news. Force the government to act before it's too late. Miller nodded. Then no more rest. Let's move. We went back to the truck, but as we exited the cave, the headlights illuminated a heart-stopping scene. The trail ahead was blocked by dozens of zombies. They stood still as statues in the snow, red eyes reflecting the light. And behind them, more were coming. Turn around, Astrid yelled, but when Miller looked in the rearview mirror, his face went pale. Behind too! We were trapped. Hundreds of zombies surrounded us from both sides, slowly tightening the circle. Any other way? I asked desperately. Miller pointed up the sheer cliff to the right. Climb. But in this weather? Freezing to death is better than being torn apart, Astrid said. Miller grabbed the bag with the equipment and supplies, leaving everything unnecessary, taking only weapons, food, and the transmitter. We jumped out of the truck just as the zombies ahead began to move, not running wildly as usual, but marching steadily, organized, scarier than madness. The cliff face was steep and slippery with ice. I found a hold, pulling myself up inch by inch. Astrid climbed right behind me, her breath mixing with the white mist. Miller brought up the rear with the rifle. Don't look down, I called to Astrid as she slipped, but she couldn't help it. Below, the sea of black zombies surrounded the abandoned truck. And strangely, they weren't fighting or chaotic. They formed lines, creating concentric circles like a ritual. What are they doing? Astrid gasped. Waiting, Miller replied from below. Waiting for something, or someone. A howl echoed from the deep woods. Not the mindless roar of a normal zombie, it was a structured sound, almost like language. Thousands of zombies at the foot of the mountain responded with a similar howl. "God," Astrid whispered, "they are communicating." "The virus evolved. It doesn't destroy the brain completely anymore. Keeps enough to form a new society," Astrid finished my thought. "A new species." My hands were numb with cold. Every grip felt like a knife cut, but we had to keep going. For Laird, for Mom, for everyone who died. A scream rang out. I looked down to see Astrid's hand slip, her body swaying dangerously. Without thinking, I let go of one hand, reached down, grabbed her wrist, and held tight. With strength I didn't know I had, I pulled Astrid up to safety. She gasped, eyes full of gratitude. "Move! Fast!" Miller roared from below. We climbed like mad, not daring to look down again. Finally, after what seemed like a lifetime, we reached a ledge, narrow but enough to stand on. Miller climbed up last, face pale. "Good job, but this is just the beginning." Looking down, I saw thousands of zombies still trying to climb. Slow, clumsy, but relentless. And in the distance, under the dim moonlight, more were coming. "Let's go," I said. "Fairbanks is waiting." We continued our journey along the narrow ridge. Every step could be the last, but in my pocket, the USB was safe. The truth still had a chance to be exposed as long as we survived the night. The first light of dawn stained the Alaskan mountains red when we finally saw Fairbanks. The city stretched at the foot of the mountain like a black gem in a sea of white snow. Smoke rose from many points, not a good sign. "We're late," Miller said, lowering his binoculars. "The city has partially fallen." Through the binoculars I saw chaos, streets full of wandering zombies, abandoned cars. But in the city center, the broadcast station building still had lights on. "Still survivors," Astrid remarked. "And the transmitter is still active. But how do we get past that sea of zombies?" I asked. Miller studied the map. "There's a Cold War service tunnel. Entrance is 2 kilometers from here. It leads straight to the broadcast building's basement." We moved down the mountain, avoiding zombie areas. Luckily, most were concentrated in the city center. The outskirts were relatively safe. The tunnel entrance was inside an abandoned warehouse. Miller broke the lock and we descended into the dark stairs. The tunnel was cold and damp, but thankfully empty. Fast and silent, Miller led with the flashlight, not knowing what waited at the other end. 30 minutes to cross the tunnel maze. Finally, we reached an iron door with a sign, "Fairbanks Radio Basement." Miller listened at the door. "Movement! People!" I knocked lightly. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. Hurried footsteps. The door cracked open, a gun barrel poking out. "Who is it?" A trembling voice. "We need help," I said quickly. "We have important information to broadcast." The door opened wider, revealing a middle-aged man with a thick beard and red-eyed eyes from lack of sleep. "Get in fast. I'm Martin, station manager." The basement had been converted into a makeshift bunker. About 10 people, station staff and civilians, huddled around radio equipment and monitors. "What's the situation?" Miller asked. "Bad," Martin replied. "Infected control half the city. Military retreated to Eielson Base. We've been stuck here for 3 days." "Broadcast system?" Astrid asked eagerly. "Still working. We're broadcasting emergency signals continuously, but..." Martin shrugged hopelessly. "We have this." I took out the USB. "Proof of the outbreak's origin. Needs to go global." Martin's eyes lit up. "If that's true, show me." Astrid plugged the USB into a computer. Files appeared. Videos, documents, reports. Martin scanned them, face turning pale. God, the government created these monsters and hid it for 8 years. "Everyone needs to know now," I said. Martin nodded decisively. "I'll broadcast it immediately. Linda, prep the satellite uplink." While they worked, I opened the last video file, the one I hadn't watched. Title, Final Message, Thorn. December 15, 1997. My mother appeared on screen, older, more tired than the previous videos. She sat in a dark room, lit only by candlelight. "Sebastian," Mom began, and my heart stopped. "If you are seeing this message, it means everything has gone out of control. You have the right to know the truth." I leaned close to the screen, not wanting to miss a word. In 1985, I joined Aurora hoping to create a new cure for humanity, but the military wanted a weapon. They forced us to test on prisoners, then soldiers, then, her voice choked, civilians. When we realized the mistake, it was too late. Virus spread, hundreds died. I tried to create a cure, but failed. Instead, I created something else, a genetic vaccine, and I injected it into you when you were still an embryo. My eyes blurred with tears. "You're not just immune, Sebastian. You carry the genetic code to create the real cure. Your blood is the key." But I hid this, afraid they would turn you into a lab rat. Now I'm dying. Cancer, probably from virus exposure, but I left clues for you. If needed, find Dr. Sophia Taylor in Seattle. She's the only one I trust with the formula. The video stopped. The room was silent. "Your blood," Astrid whispered. "We can create a cure." "Later," Miller said. "First, broadcast the news." "Ready," Martin announced. "Satellite connection stable, broadcasting to every major news agency." "Do it," I ordered. Martin pressed the button. On screen, a progress bar started moving. 10%, 25%. Suddenly, the whole building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. "What was that?" someone screamed. Miller checked the security monitors. His face went pale. "They're here, thousands of them, breaking down the main doors. 50%, 65%. "Doors won't hold long," Martin yelled. "Everyone prepare." Those with weapons lined up at the basement door. Miller checked his ammo. Astrid squeezed my hand tight. 85%. The sound of metal buckling echoed from above. Then footsteps. Hundreds, thousands of footsteps thundering like drums. "They're in," someone screamed. 90%, 95%. The basement door vibrated violently. Claws scratching metal, roars echoing. "Hold the line," Miller shouted. 98%, 99%. The door burst open. Zombies poured in like a flood. Gunfire was deafening, blood and flesh flying, but there were too many. For every one that fell, 3 took its place. "Complete," Martin shouted. "Sent!" But zombies had flooded the room. One lunged straight at Martin, tearing out his throat. Blood sprayed. "No!" I rushed forward, but was too late. Miller sniped them all one by one, but ammo was running low. Astrid pulled me behind the generator. "Escape!" she yelled. But there was no escape. Zombies everywhere. This was the end. Then something strange happened. The zombies suddenly stopped. Frozen. They turned their heads, listening to something we couldn't hear. A voice boomed from the speakers, not from our system. A voice terrifyingly familiar. "Sebastian, my son." My heart stopped. It was my mother's voice, but impossible. The zombies parted, making a path. Out of the darkness stepped a woman. My mother, or what used to be my mother. Her skin was pale, but not rotting like the others. Hair still black, though streaked with silver. Eyes were still the warm brown I remembered from childhood, only now they glinted red when they caught the light. She wore a white lab coat like in my memories, but stained with dried blood and torn in places. "Mom?" I whispered, disbelieving. "Sebastian," she said, voice raspy, but still hers. "My beloved son, I've waited for you for 23 years. "But you disappeared. They said you died." "I did die," she confirmed, stepping closer. The smell of lavender, her perfume, mixed with blood and rot. "Died in 1975 trying to stop the spread. But they brought me back. Experiment with the 9 creators. They turned me into Subject 0, version 2. She smiled sadly. My virus is different, controlled, allows me to keep my consciousness, memory, even love, and the ability to control other infected. Astrid backed away, gun trembling. That's impossible. The virus doesn't... The virus does many things you don't know, girl. Mom turned to Astrid. You were a good student, but still just a student. Meredith Thorne is the one who wrote the rules. For what? Astrid asked, voice shaking. My mother turned to her. To end it all. The news is out. The world will know. Then she looked back at me. Now you must live to create the cure. But Mom, I can't cure you. Sebastian, but others can. She raised a hand and all zombies in the room knelt. This is my final gift. Go, before I lose control. I saw it in her eyes. The internal war, the human part losing to the monster. Mom, I said, tears flowing. I'm sorry. No, she smiled, the sad smile of a mother who loves her child. I am the one who is sorry. Now go, live, save everyone.
Miller pulled me. We have to go, now! We ran past the kneeling zombies, up the stairs, through the building, onto the street. Behind us, a roar erupted. My mother had lost control, but we had escaped. And as we ran toward the military base, I heard helicopters, many helicopters from everywhere. They're here, Astrid screamed with joy. Army, CDC, everyone! In the sky, dozens of transport planes appeared. Paratroopers jumped. Tanks rolled into the city. The counterattack had begun. 3 months later, I stood in a clean CDC lab in Atlanta, looking at the first vial of Aurora vaccine created from my blood, packaged for distribution. 1 million doses in the first batch. Enough for every survivor in Alaska, Dr. Taylor said beside me. Alaska, the land now liberated, but forever scarred. Tens of thousands dead, whole towns wiped out, but humanity survived. And the infected, I asked? Most terminated, some captured for study. Taylor hesitated. There's news about your mother. I shook my head. I don't want to know. Actually, I knew. Mom died. Truly died this time, in the final assault on the radio station, but not before she helped us escape. The death of a mother who loved her child. Astrid walked in, smile brighter than in months. Good news! The government agreed to declassify all Aurora files. No more secrets. I nodded. That's what Laird and Miller sacrificed for. Miller survived, but lost a leg in the battle. The truth was finally out. What will you do now? Astrid asked. I thought for a moment. Right. Tell this story so no one forgets. A horror story? I shook my head. A story about courage, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about the price of blind ambition. And I paused, thinking of Mom, and about love that transcends even death. We stood there, watching the vaccine being shipped out. Each dose was a piece of me, of my mother, of everyone who died. A painful but necessary legacy. Outside the window, the sun set behind the Atlanta skyline, painting the sky orange-red. But not the color of fire and blood anymore. It was the color of hope. The story of Alaska 1998 has ended. But the story of humanity, the story of survival, of learning from mistakes, of building a better future has only just begun, and I will be there to record it all. Excerpt from Shadows of Alaska, memoir by Sebastian Thorne, published 2000. People ask me if I regret revealing the truth. The answer is no. Even though I had to witness the death of friends, even though I had to face my family's painful past, I believe the light of truth is always stronger than the darkness of lies. My mother once said,
Science is neither good nor bad, only humans decide how to use it. She was wrong and right. Wrong to believe she could control the power of life and death, but right to believe in human conscience. Alaska is recovering now. Fairbanks is being rebuilt. The victims are memorialized. And somewhere in a CDC lab, the Aurora vaccine is saving lives that were once considered lost. Sometimes, in sleepless nights, I still hear Mom's voice whispering in the Alaska wind, "My beloved son, live well." And I try. Every day I try. For those who are gone, for those still living, for the future. Atlanta, Georgia,